Hello and welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. And I'm in the town of Wick. Yeah, it's a harbour town with a bit of fishery going on. And in the town part of Pulteney, we find the same distillery named Old Pulteney. And today we're going to find out how the Old Pulteney whiskey is being made. So, the distillery's early beginnings start in 1826 by a guy named James Henderson, and he did illicit distilling already back before that, but he definitely didn't do it here. He did it more inland, because here the town of Wick, and back then there was two towns, Wick and Pulteney, and they were really big ports for the herring industry. They had tons of cooperage here, so it was perfect to have a distillery here as well, because the cooperage could make you casks for your whiskey, and the port could transport it very well. In 1920, so 100 years ago, that was running really well. It was sold to James Watson and Sons of Dundee, and that was really not a good sale, because in 1922 there was a big referendum in a lot of counties in Scotland. 600 counties voted, and 40 of them voted for prohibition. Amongst them was Wick, so you were not allowed alcohol in this county. So in 22 the ownership was transferred to Scottish malt distilleries, and the distillery was mothballed, so it was still kind of kept in shape that you could start it again, but it didn't produce anything at all. It was owned by Arthur George Burnett from 1838 to 1946 with a very restrictive covenants. In 1946, Robert Cummings, a guy who also bought Balblair 4 years ago, bought the distillery, and he actually renovated it, installed electricity, and in 1947, on the 28th of May, the prohibition was lifted, but to get a distillery up and running again, it took a bit of time, did a bit of management, and in 1951 Pulteney recommenced distilling. So that was when they got up and running again. Then they later got owned by Hiram Walker, and under Hiram Walker we have a major refurbishment in 1958. So back in days they had a lot of smaller stills. I think it was 6 or 8 smaller stills. Nowadays they have 2 big stills that we're gonna see later. Hiram Walker then merged with Allied Distillers, but the Old Pulteney Distillery, they were not meant to go to the other big company that became out of Allied Distillers, but they were sold to Inverhouse Distillers. They also purchased Balblair the following year, so they now belong to the Inverhouse Distillery or distillers. And they then went a bit away from the blend strategy, as many people did in that time, and they went all in for the single malt industry. So in 1997, Old Pulteney, 12-year-old single malt distillery, was released, and it was kind of a celebration of 50 years of the repeal of the prohibition in Wick. That was it with the history, and let's go into the production and see how a whiskey is being made. Behind me is the malt mill, and the malt mill is being fed by malt silos, and they can hold up to 51 tons of malt. One batch is about 5.1 tons, and this is done by this very over 100 years old malt mill. And the malt mill is regularly maintained by Robert Lee. That's that one guy that drives all over Scotland and maintains all these malt mills in top shape. And yes, he actually did a bit of an improvement, because with the normal malt mill you have to fill in oil for the the bearings every now and then. And he actually built a little oil reservoir there that oils the machine, and you really then have to not do pretty much anything to the malt mill. It just runs. It's very, 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 very durable, and it just runs like forever. So, and after that, we go into the mashing. The mash tun at Pulteney is actually pretty new. They had an old mash tun, cast iron, and there were a bit of cracks in there, and it was just not a good state. It was open, so all the air and all the heat dissipated very, very quickly, so it was really inefficient. So they thought themselves 8 years ago, let's build a new mash tun, have a nice copper lid on top of it, and have energy conservation because of that. And yeah, so a really good mash tun overall. The Pulteney Distillery does 4 mashings, so they have they start usual with like around about 65, and they end with a 4th mashing around about 95. So they take out really every last bit of sugar from the grist that it comes from the malt. And the last 2 mashings, the last 2 waters are stored separately, and they are used as water for the 1st and 2nd of the next batch to, get that the maximum amount of sugar out of everything. And so this is a really, really efficient process nowadays and really environmentally friendly. And after that, it's off to the wash bags. The distillery has 6 wash bags, and they are filled to 23,500 liters. And the distillery does use the wash charger as a wash bag as well, but it does it irregularly, not with every shift. So what they also do is they mix the yeast in while they're filling the wash bag. So the mix is of mash and yeast is very, very, very constant and very, very good distributed. So the yeast can act immediately. It doesn't act fast because you don't want a fast fermentation that gives you a lot of taste that you don't want. But you want to have it react immediately everywhere. So that makes it a bit faster without fermenting it too fast. And so they're using about a good yeast that gives you a fruity taste, and they're also fermenting 60 hours, which is pretty long. So you would expect the whiskey to be a fruity, lighter Northern Highland whiskey. But we'll go to the distillation and we'll have a look if that is changed in that stage at all. So this here is the still house, and we have a big wash still you can fill it up to 16,000 liters, and the spirit still up to 13,000 liters, plus minus 100 liters. And if you look at the wash still, I've never seen any wash still like it. It has such a reflux bowl, a really, really big reflux bowl. And at the top, you see, it didn't fit, so we have to put it on the side, the line arm, which also makes more reflux and gives you a better separation of alcohol, which isn't that prevalent in the wash still stage. In the first distillation, is the separation of alcohol is not that important. What is interesting is that they're coming off with over 30% ABV from the wash still. So this is really a good separation, high distillation in the first run. It runs pretty fast. So the spirit still doesn't have to have, it gets 30% alcohol and makes the life for the spirit still a lot easier. So you can run it slower, which makes it more easy style of whiskey. And it also has a reflux bowl, a lot of copper contact. And if you look around the line arm, you see a purifier. The purifier is empty. It doesn't have anything anymore in there, except if it condenses there, it flows through a pipe back into the spill. And usually back in the days, it was you had water running through there, and it purified it took out the harsher elements that run back into the pot still. But they don't run that way anymore. So everything I said would suggest that we would have a really, 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 really light, fruity new make spirit.
which isn't the case with Pulteney. So how does the style that's Pulteney, which has some volume, it has some strength to it, how does that occur? And that is found outside the still room. They actually do have warm chops, and warm chops are always they are preferring the warm chops to give you more spiciness. They give you a bit more of a rougher feeling if you condense it through a warm top. And that's exactly what we get with Old Pulteney. We have a very, very fine distillation plus warm tips, which give you the spiciness and the strength to the new make spirit. And that's what the guys at Pulteney are looking for. And now let's find out how they are filled in the cask.
So the filling story here at the Old Pulteney Distillery is pretty nice and also pretty, traditional. So the casks that come in are standing, empty cask is usually standing. They paint them white if they're not already white at one end, and then they stencil on their distillery name and the town name, as well as a year number, and then we have numbers for the individual casks. So you can identify them, write them down, where you have which cask it was, when it was filled. So you have everything in the books. You can check out what casks you want to have if you want to produce a batch of whiskey or some individual whiskeys. What is always the weakest part of a cask is typically or most often the bung. So the bung is kind of your weak spot. So when you refill a cask, it is really inexpensive to just put in a new bung. And you have different bungs from 2 1/8 of an inch to up to, I think, somewhere around 3 is a bit maximum. So they put all new bungs in because, you don't want to have any leakage at all. When they're done, you hammer it in, you fill that, you hammer it in, and then you roll it off into the warehouse, and that's where we're going next. So I'm standing in one of the 5 warehouses from Old Pulteney. And all the warehouses didn't used to be warehouses for whiskey. Back in the days, the herring trade was really big here around in this town. So one of the warehouses was a cooperage, now a whiskey warehouse, where they built casks. Some of the casks may have been used as whiskey storage as well, but most of the casks here in town of Wick were used for the herring trade, because there were a lot of fishers going out catching the herrings, and then they were salted and put into the casks. But that trade is pretty much gone. Nowadays, every British person likes more white fish like haddock and cod, so the herring trade really went downwards, and now it is used for storing whiskey. The distillery has 5 warehouses, 2 racked warehouses, about like 8 casks, 7 casks high, and the rest of the warehouses, 3 warehouses, are dunnage warehouses, all stored 3 high or 2 sherry casks high. And they have a lot of bourbon casks on site, about 90% bourbon casks or bourbon hogsheads, and then there are still a few, like 10% sherry casks on site that are used for the mixing of the Old Pulteney whiskey. All the casks are being stored for about at least 12 years. The older expressions are definitely a bit older, and this is all done in a very slow fashioned way, as we have a pretty maritime climate, so everything is very humid, temperature differences are not that high, and that means we have a very slow maturation and good for old whiskies. So that was it for the production, and let's continue with the interview. So I'm sitting here with Malcolm Waring. You've been 32 years within the whiskey production, and now 22 years already as a distillery manager.
That's right.
A lot of experience. Thank you very much for having us here at the distillery.
You're very welcome. Welcome to Wick and welcome to Pulteney.
It was amazing experience.
It's an old traditional distillery.
It is,
and it's like, when you see it kind of like, as we see, warts and all. Mm-hmm. There's what you see is what you get. It's a working distillery. You're very much hands-on, and you're in about the thick of it when you see it.
Every time you visit a distillery, you see something new, and I've never seen a wash still like you have.
Well, it's very different. Totally unique in the industry.
And I always love the distilleries with with what do you call it, the condensers, the old warm tubs.
Warm tub, yeah, very
Yeah,
traditional. I think there's something like 130 something working distilleries in Scotland presently, and there's only about 16 or 17 of us using worm tubs. So
Yeah, I've seen a few, but
yeah, not too many.
There are
Not too many.
There are few left.
Yeah, there's not too many of them.
It's just hard to maintain.
Very much, very expensive to maintain. Obviously, you know, with all the copper. So I mean, at Pulteney, there's 110 metre worm in each tub. So that takes a lot of looking after in a year for both of them.
100 that can leak everywhere.
Well,
Every
the secret is keeping on top of it. The secret is keeping it well maintained, and you don't have so many leaks.
But I think it's easier if you're at the shore. If you land in and you have a burn, and you have great restrictions in terms of heat and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, we're fortunate. Our water source is from Hempriggs, which is just a wee bit out the road there. It follows what we call a lade. And it's the biggest man-made lade in Europe, and it was designed and built by Thomas Tilford, and it's about 3.5 miles long. Anyway, because it's man-made, we are not restricted on the uplift temperature because it's not going into a natural water course. So we're quite fortunate that way.
Yeah.
But we have tight controls on the volume that we use. So we monitor that quite strictly.
Yeah, every distillery is nowadays going into monitoring the environmental.
Yeah, I mean,
aspects.
as you know, Benedict, what we're producing is all comes from the environment.
Yeah.
And you've got to look after the environment, because if you don't, the whiskey's not there basically.
Yeah.
You really need to kind of look after it very much.
But I'm really excited about the product now.
Okay.
So, what is the first one we're going to take?
We're going to try the 12 years old. Okay.
Okay.
The 12 years old is our core. Okay. It's the DNA of Pulteney Distillery, Wick, where we're from, you know, the expression, the coast. We're very much influenced by the sea, and you'll get that in the 12. It's at 40% by volume, okay? It's matured in 100% ex-American oak, and it's mainly refill, okay? Now, as you mentioned the still earlier on, they're very unusual, okay? It produces a very big, beefy, you know, kind of powerful, kind of veggie kind of spirit. Quite a robust, oily spirit. You put that into a good American oak cask, and that takes butterscotch, it brings on coconut. You really have the fruits and the esters, and you get that coupled with the coastal expression, the brininess in the 12. And it's very much a signature whiskey for Pulteney.
Yeah, I would have expected it a lot lighter. Just because if you hear how long you ferment and what kind of reflux you have, but on the other hand, yeah, warm tubs.
Yep, you're going to get a robustness.
Robust.
You know, when you swirl it around there, you've got that oiliness. It does it cloys to the glass, which is a really good sign.
So,
A lot of mouthfeel, sludge.
Slasher.
Mellow, complex, sweet, floral, estery. Touch of banana in there too. So you've got that kind of like banana dryness coming through right on the very finish.
It starts off very mild, but then after a few seconds it hits you with a good amount of spiciness, volume, and strength, and a little marine flavor as well. Yes,
Yeah. Coastal, very much.
I like it. I would have expected it much lighter.
Yeah, I know it's again, as you say, it's the size and shape of the still, the worm tub, and where we are. It puts a right boldness into it. But soft, complex whiskey.
But it's a really oily whiskey, and you feel in your mouth. It's
And another thing as well, which is very unusual about this, if you put it to your ear, okay, you can hear the sea.
nice. I would have, if you wouldn't have said oily, I would have said creamy.
Yeah.
But now
There's a creaminess to it, yeah, a kind of toffee creaminess to it.
Yeah, in a whiskey, the creaminess, oiliness.
Well, you've got a butterscotch. You know, you've got that butterscotch coconut as well.
Yeah, that's the oak. I like it.
Yeah.
Always like a pure bourbon cask is also a really nice thing.
Yeah. This is all matured. You know, you run the warehouses there, and this is all matured in rack warehouses.
Oh, okay.
You know, so it's, as you can see, they're 9 high. So there's a slight difference in the humidity level of it. So I mean, you really, you know, these made up of the 12 is it tends to sit up quite high in the racks. We've deliberately placed them there, and it's almost like a second distillation within the cask, and it really intensifies all the fruits. So it's just the position within it Slightly different humidity, and it's bringing on the fruit, and it brings that onto the 12.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, I like it. So we've already talked about a bit about the water and that the environmental aspect of it. I've heard that you changed something else, like with your boiler, and yeah. So how did that work?
Yeah, back in 2006, we up to that point we were using fossil fuel for our primary fuel source for driving for fueling the distillery. 2006, there was an initiative locally that we, coupled with a private venture, built a biomass boiler on our site.
Okay.
So essentially, it's wood chip. So the steam is supplied by the wood chip boiler. It comes down to the distillery. We use the steam, obvious, for driving everything within the distillery. The condensate, or the hot water, after we're finished, it goes around the district heating scheme, and it heats the homes of 250 houses within the town, in the local area, the immediate area, and also the local hospital.
Ah, okay. So you're doing it like with renewable energies, and you're also using the waste energy for other homes.
Yeah, for other homes too.
Ah, that is
And that goes
nice.
around the district heating scheme. It goes back into the boiler to be, made into steam again, and comes down to us. And we use
So
it.
it's already.
So we're an integral part of that process that keeps going all the time.
So what happens when the distillery goes on to maintenance?
Well, when we go silent, there's a spare boiler there that is really for hot water.
Ah, okay.
So we don't use the steam then, so it's just providing hot water to the district heating.
So you're pitching it a bit down, and
Yeah. If we're only
the
down,
hospital still has heating.
oh yeah, very much. The homes, all the people still get their homes heated in the hospital too. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that is nice. That is really nice.
Yeah, so we've never used fossil fuel since 2006. So.
Oh, that is really, really good. Nice. Okay, so Old Pulteney 15 then.
15, yeah. This is one of our new expressions. It's only been out a couple of years. The 15-year-old starts off life the same as the 12. It's made from plain malt, so there's no phenolics whatsoever. It's first filled into refill American oak, and it's had a number of years in there. And what I've done then, I've taken it out and I've racked it, and I've put it into first fill Oloroso Spanish oak butts.
So it's a finish.
No, it's a further maturation. It's not a finish because
Further maturation.
Yeah, it's in there. It's in there for quite a substantial number of years.
Ah, okay, so it's double or sequential maturation.
Yes, aye. So
okay.
it's had so much of its life in American oak, and then the remainder of its life in Spanish oak. And really, what it's doing then again, you've got and it's matured further in dunnage warehouses. Okay, into dunnage. So you've still got that oiliness, you've still got the boldness, you've still got the fruit, the ester, but bringing it on in Spanish oak, you've got a level of spice in there. It's like a fresh spice,
Yeah.
You've got licorice, you've got toffee, you've got clove, and there's like a red apple going through it.
It feels a little bit like these Christmas spices.
Yeah.
They have like yeah.
You got the fruits of that. You got the stony kind of pulpy fruit.
Yeah. It's strange because you do have the cloves. The orange is a little bit present, but it's not as strong as in other whiskies.
No, it's like in the terms of the orange world, you've got the big oranges, and then you've got the satsuma, which is a bit more mild. So you've got that orange kind of citrusy note coming through, but it's a bit more subdued.
It does have quite a number of more. It does have a bit of a fruitiness to it as well.
Yeah.
The spiciness, I would say yes, that's the dominant note here.
Yeah.
Coming from the oak, but it does have a bit of a fruitiness as well.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's well balanced. That's the thing about it. It's well balanced. It's something that's difficult to do, when you're playing about with different styles of cask and different styles of maturation to get the balance just right. And I think with a 15-year-old, it's just bang on.
Oh, nice. Sludge.
Sludge you are. Spiciness very much evident on your palate now. You chew that.
Oh yeah, a little bit more intensity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beginning was quite similar with the intensity to the 12.
Then it becomes more complex.
Then it just kicks off with a lot more spiciness. This had already had a bit of spiciness in it.
But the intensity is there. The complexity, the robustness, even the depth.
It's hard for me to tell them. Is that spiciness comes from the warmed up, or is that spiciness from the oak?
It's from the oak.
It's probably a mixture, but I would say oak is a bit more dominant there. Nice whiskey. We've talked about your town being a fisher town and that kind of stuff, and so how's the temperature? How is the climate affecting the whiskey?
We're because we're on the coast, right in the northern part of Scotland. We are very remote. It's as you come up and follow the coast all the way up. We're sitting basically on the top of a cliff. So you go further inland, the humidity and the climate is very different. I mean, we're heavily influenced by the sea. 100 yards down the road, and you've got the North Sea. It influences us so much. You know, the distillery grew up with that. Herring was fishing was a very, Wick at one point was the busiest herring port in Europe. The distillery grew up with that. You know, the climate hasn't changed in nowhere. It's, you know, because we have a kind of constant level of humidity. It really, you know, the coldest we would get is like -2, -3, and in the summertime, you know, the hottest we get would be about 17, 18 degrees. So there isn't a big difference in the humidity. So really what I'm playing on is the difference in the levels within the warehouses where the humidity would be slightly different.
So is it higher, is it lower humidity then?
It can be a slightly higher, obviously, within the racks. You've got that higher humidity, where it's lower, it's a wee bit more damper. You know, so you've got a bit more kind of moisture in it, which brings it slightly different, and you'll experience that in the next whiskey, the 18 years old. So, you know, living where we are, you've got such an influence from the sea, you've got a constant humidity, and the temperature's fluctuation is pretty minimal.
So perfect for a very slow maturation.
The environment for that is great for that, slow maturation. Yeah, without a doubt.
Nice. So you talked about the herring town. Is there any like record of an old guy, you know, when they had tons of casks from herrings? Is there a record of somebody back in the days putting whiskey in a herring cask?
Well, I haven't got written records, but we've got, you know, what's been muted to us by word of mouth, that a gentleman had a cask from another distillery that wasn't maturing too well, so he put it into a cask, a herring cask, an old herring cask, and decided he wanted to call it Fishky. So
Fishky,
yeah. So there is things like that, and no doubt in the past locally there's been, you know, because there was 500 coopers used to work in the town during the boom years, and there was like 6 cooperages. So no doubt somewhere along the line somebody's, you know, had a cask and they put some whiskey in it locally. And
yeah, probably. Have you tried it?
No.
I can't imagine that it's good.
I couldn't comment on it, to be honest. Like
I think it's also illegal to call it Scotch then.
You can't call it Scotch whiskey.
Yeah. There's a strict.
Yeah. That's why it was called Fishky and not single malt. That's why it's called Fishky. You wouldn't be allowed to call it that.
I think everybody wants just 1 dram of Fishky.
Well, now next one, Benedict, is the 18 years old. Okay. This is the 18 years old. Now again, it's you know, not unlike the 12 and the 15, where it started off in American oak and then racked into Spanish oak, ex-Galician butts. Its entire life, it's matured in Dunnage warehouse. Okay, it's not between the racks, so it's been low down, a lot damper environment. For a period of its time. Actually, right above us was the kiln. Many years ago, this was the kiln, okay? In this area here. And above us just now is a bonded warehouse, but that's where the kiln sat. When you go down to the bottom end of that warehouse in number 6, that kiln came out in 1959, okay? Stopped working in 1926. The wall in that area is damp. There's like a mossy kind of fungal growth on that wall. And it's remained damp since 1926, nearly 100 years. And it's never dried out. The microflora within that part of the warehouse, you've got that kind of mustiness to it as well. It's very pleasant, but it is only in that particular part. Okay. So what I've done for a period of its maturation time is place these casks in that particular area, and I wanted to impart that within the DNA of the whiskey. And you'll get that kind of mossiness to it as well. And again, it's spicy, okay? But for me, it's more of a softer cooked spice, okay? The intensity of spice on there is a lot less than the 15. But it's there, it's subtle. Again, you've got that creamy toffee, and then you've got the stony, pulpy fruit.
Yeah,
okay?
it's like much milder than the other ones.
It's a cooked apple. It's a very soft whiskey, very soft, very complex again, but and it has its own DNA. And it's a deep whiskey, almost as deep as the ocean that's just out down the road there.
It's amazing because it does have, it's mild, much less intensity than the others, but it has a nice spiciness to it, but also again not a sharp spiciness, no hotness or pepper or something like that.
For me, it's like a creme brulee as well.
Yeah, something like that.
You've got that dark
So
sugar
what did you
crust
say?
on it.
Is there a bourbon cask in there as well?
Initially,
Initially,
yeah.
Because that's what I thought. If that's 100% sherry, that would be strange for me.
Yeah, no, it's initially
Yeah,
American.
yeah.
It's American.
It does have also
Yeah.
creme brulee, the caramel, the fudge,
But it's all dunnage.
Old Dunwich.
All dunnage. So I mean, the 12 is all racked. The 15 is a mix of racked and dunnage, and the 18 is all dunnage warehouse.
Okay, nice.
18 years at 46%, non-chill filtered, so you have that mouthfeel again. Definitely have that mouthfeel too.
Oh, nice. Sludge it.
There you are.
Okay, I can feel a bit of the character of the distillery, but it's much different than the others. It does have, from my point of view, it does have a little bit less fruitiness and a little bit more spiciness.
Yeah.
Strange, I would have expected more fruitiness here.
It just shows you the difference, between the different styles of maturation, the length of time in each individual type of cask, and the type of warehousing environment, its maturation environment. I mean, you're only talking 3 years of difference between 15 and 18, but the difference in the whiskey is tremendous.
Yeah, the type of the position in the warehouse is a lot different. If you have it probably at the bottom of a rack warehouse, it's similar to a dunnage, but at the very, very top, it's probably a bit hotter in the summer, even though.
Yeah, a bit more humid.
I like it. But anyway, so your style is more robust than usual for the area, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
Coastal, it's going to do that.
Yeah.
It's all plain malted barley. It's malted in Inverness, and we buy it from Baird's Malting Group. Have done for many, many years. So it's grown locally, the northeast coast of I'm saying locally, relatively local, and everything about it is local, and that coast again is going to impart such an influence on it, and it makes it a robust whiskey that has a lot of mouthfeel, has a lot of complexity, has a bit of softness to it as well. But it's distilled by the environment as much as it's distilled by the distillery.
Yeah, it's always it depends on where you are if you distill the whiskey.
Yeah.
Depends a lot on your water, a lot on your maturation, climate, and everything. But I love the whiskies of the north. They are really, really nice.
They're very different.
You really feel slow maturation.
Yeah.
Still, every Scotch is kind of slower than you would expect from, let's say, a Kentucky straight bourbon. But this is, even a bit further than with slow. I like it. So, that was wonderful at your distillery.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming along, and thanks for looking us out. Hope you enjoyed the distillery, the place, the whiskies. Our pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thanks for the whiskies. Thanks for the interview.
You're very welcome.
And thank you very much for watching this video, and if you found this video interesting, then please feel free to share this video with your friends who might be interested in whiskey. And see you next time.